As a counsellor who's worked over the past 5 years in the UK, from private practice in the NHS to agency settings, the one thing that I've noticed across almost all of my clients is how we tend to get sabotaged by the emotions we experience rather than experiencing emotions for what they truly are. And in this video, I want to unpack the one common theme that seems to be the reason behind our suffering, which is identifying with our emotions. Before we get into it, I'm Desh, I'm a qualified counsellor, and in this video I want us to focus on the identification with the emotions we experience and why it's a problem. Emotions set us into motion. They make us move, and I've spoken before about how we are driven by our emotions to act. The emotion is the driver. If we're feeling fearful, then we will act to seek safety, whether it's rational or irrational. If we're feeling quite guilty, then we're going to try and do things to please others or try to appease the guilt. Again, whether it's rational or irrational. Now, the one thing I want to talk about here is how our emotions don't have a brain. Our emotions cannot decipher what is true and what's not true, what is rational and what's not rational. We are going to experience emotions whether or not the event that we are emotional about is happening or has happened yet. Our emotions don't have the capacity to tell us, well, you're feeling afraid, but actually there's no reason to feel afraid because the thing you're fearful about hasn't happened yet. Or you're feeling guilty, but you have nothing to feel guilty about. Our emotions don't do this for us. So the problem is we rely heavily on the emotions we experience because we identify with it and we therefore assume it's true. We assume that if we feel guilty, we've done something bad, we need to fix it. If we feel fearful, then we need to go and address that fear. Even when someone looking in will say, well, wait a minute, what are you fearful about? Or what are you guilty about? You've done nothing wrong or nothing's happening. So our mind can generate scenarios where we become emotional and we can attach to the emotion. And because the emotions are almost physical, and what I mean by that is it's visceral, you can feel it. You can feel emotions. Like fear and guilt and shame, these are not just concepts, they're feelings. We feel them. We can't avoid them. And because we feel them and because they're unpleasant, we are then driven by action to try and counteract it. This is the problem and this is the cause of suffering that I've noticed across almost all of my clients. And this is why I keep speaking about self-awareness. The more aware you are, not just of how you're feeling, but why you're feeling like that, where it came from, and more importantly, where you want to go, the less likely you will be to allow those things to sabotage you and to hold you back. You have been hijacked by those emotions you're experiencing in order to act in a way that's not going to serve you. It's just going to feed into the emotion. So let's say you're feeling guilty. Let's say you're feeling that you're not a good enough son or a good enough daughter. And you're feeling guilty that your parents are perhaps getting older and you haven't spent as much time with them as you would have liked to. Or you feel you haven't been the daughter or son that you would have wanted to be for them, or you think that they wanted you to be. So you start feeling guilty. And that guilt sits in the pit of your stomach. You just can't relax. It's there, and then it's generating the thoughts of you're not good enough, they're not proud of you, you haven't done enough for them, they've given you all of this time, and what have you accomplished? You've accomplished nothing. So this guilt starts to play in your mind, and it's amazing how on the outside, no one else is experiencing the feeling or thoughts you are. It's all within you, yet you're convincing yourself by identifying with the guilt that this must be true. I need to fix it. And so you go and then start spending more time with your parents, or start to prove to them why they were right to invest that much time in you, or how much you have accomplished. Or perhaps you feel guilty and shameful because you haven't accomplished what you think they wanted of you. So you start apologizing. You're taking action in order to address the guilt that you're experiencing, rather than saying, I'm experiencing guilt, I'm feeling guilt, but I am not that. Because when we experience guilt, fear, sadness, we say, I'm afraid, I am sad, I am guilty. And that statement of I am is an identification with the emotion you're experiencing, and you're identifying with the emotion because you're feeling it and there's no escape. Whereas we as beings, as conscious beings, can allow the full spectrum of emotions to exist within us without necessarily identifying with a particular emotion. Because we feel something doesn't mean it's true. Now, this goes back to my first point I made, that emotions don't have their own intelligence. It would be so much easier if the emotions we experience could kind of do some fact checking and data checking for us, so we know that they should legitimately belong there. But the fact is, our emotions don't. They are often conditioned based on things that have happened in our environment. So we may be feeling guilty or negative or anxious about things that we should not be feeling those things for. We're just interpreting things in a certain way, which is causing these emotions to fester. And what you need to do is do emotional scoping, which is to survey, what emotions am I experiencing? How do those emotions impact my actions? And if you can link those together and trace it back to the original thought, then you've just identified what I call patterns of behavior. And then you can decide whether those patterns of behavior are sabotaging or not sabotaging. Sabotaging is when it's not getting you any closer towards what you want to strive for and your goals. And you know when something's sabotaging, when it works against you, when you end up feeling worse or you end up feeling you have to explain yourself afterwards. These are sabotaging actions and behaviors and patterns. Even if you identify with positive emotions, this is also going to lead to suffering in the longer term, because when you identify saying, I am happy, I am excited, you may be experiencing those things. However, because you've now identified with it and said, I am, and you've assigned yourself as that emotion, those emotions will not last. So when that happiness goes or the excitement goes, then what are you? You drop off. You become low, you become depressed, you start chasing for that positive emotion again. Whereas if you say, I'm experiencing happiness and excitement, and I notice this, you are naturally separating yourself, the being who can experience all forms of emotion, with the emotion you're experiencing. You're separating yourself. So you're accepting the happiness is there, and I accept it's going to go. Excitement's there, and I accept it's going to go. Sadness is there, grief is there, guilt is there, shame is there, and I accept it will go. You are allowing the emotions to be, rather than saying, I am this, I am that. By doing that and saying, I am this emotion, I am that emotion, and identifying with it, you're limiting yourself. You're limiting yourself to that one emotion. And because you've limited yourself to that one emotion by saying, I am this, you've removed any ability to regulate yourself from that particular emotion, because you've already identified with it. Rather than saying, I'm experiencing happiness, I wonder what this happiness is about. I'm experiencing sadness, and I can feel it. I'm not just experiencing it conceptually, I'm feeling it in my gut, in my body. It's sitting in my shoulders, it's sitting on my jaw. I'm really tense. It's just really got a grip on me. I wonder why. Where's this from? You are empowering yourself by separating yourself from that emotion, by not identifying with it. Just because you feel an emotion doesn't mean you are that emotion. It is an experience you're undertaking, but see it as an experience, as an expression of something. Perhaps it's an expression of an underlying need that you have. Something has triggered you to react in that way. Because something can happen in the world, and we can have many different perspectives and opinions and feelings and emotions about it, depending on who we are, where we sit in the world, what experiences we've had in the past, how we see things, how we think about things, how we process things. So be cautious about identifying with your emotions, because just because you experience an emotion doesn't mean it's based in rationality or it's logically sound or it has its place being there. You may be experiencing emotions that are coming from a deeper source of need, and it's trying to communicate to you. And you can see many times when different things happen, some people will always react to what's perceived as irrationally, like extreme. They get upset over something so trivial that we consider to be trivial, but for them is very triggering and upsetting. Again, who is right? Are you right for experiencing kind of moderate emotions, or are they right for experiencing intense emotions? At the end of the day, there's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong. But what it comes down to is the validity of the emotion you're experiencing and what it's trying to communicate to you. So by saying, I am anger, I am guilt, you're limiting yourself to that emotion rather than becoming curious about what's going on here, what's happening, why am I experiencing this? Now, one of the ways that can help you to kind of make sense of the emotions you're experiencing, particularly if you experience a mix of emotions that tend to sabotage you, that tend to make you feel stuck, make you feel insecure, make you feel confused, is to create like a mind map. A map of what thoughts you have, what emotions you experience, how it impacts your behaviors, and identify patterns that you deem to be sabotaging. I'm in the process of developing a course right now that's going to address this question and is going to be part of a much wider course on how to develop self-awareness. I'm really excited to be able to share it with you once it's all ready, but we're in the early stages, but I will keep you guys updated. Please comment below how you identify patterns of behavior and emotions that you feel sabotage you. Please like and subscribe. There's going to be more content coming out very soon.